And
So,
while Steve is pulling up my PowerPoint, I believe, too, to guide us through this conversation. Steve, did I even know that you bowled with my dad? You probably told me that. And
no, I did not tell you that. I did not tell you. There was a special group that came over, and I believe they were sponsored by some insurance agency over there.
It was
And
probably my dad's insurance agency. Well, I love that little fun fact. And yes, I am a proud Ray J and product of the Ray Public School District,
Wow.
including, yes, Arlie Larson, Principal Caps Lock. I've seen his emails that used to go out to all of you in which he never took the caps lock off. I actually got a call from him on Sunday. He was looking for some information on a rural development program. So fun to hear from him too. And nice to be with all of you. Thank you so much for the work that you do for rural school districts. Always enjoyed opportunities to work together when I was in the North Dakota Senate. Really pleased, frankly, to be working in a little less controversial area where we get to help people accomplish their goals and fight with people a lot less in order to do it. So thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to be here. What I intend to do in this time that we have together is to give you a good understanding of what rural development does, how you can reach us. And I've tried to limit my focus today on programs I thought would be really relevant to rural school districts, while it won't encompass all of the programs that we administer. I will also provide you with a link so that you can check out additional programs if you're interested in doing that later. So Steve, I think you're going to advance my slides for me. For anybody who's unfamiliar with rural development, our mission is to help improve the economic opportunity and quality of life in rural America and tribal communities. We do that in 3 ways. If you want to advance to the next slide. If you take anything away from this time together, please think of rural development specifically as operating almost similar to a bank. We provide financing. We don't do the planning for anybody. We come in as a partner to try to help you put together the best financing package for what your needs are in your community. And we offer loan guarantees, direct loans, and grants. We do that specifically in rural areas. There are different definitions of rural depending on the rural development program you are talking about. If you're ever questioning that eligibility based on population, you can do it at this link by clicking on that little circled area right there. But the good news for all of you, if you are not in Fargo, Grand Forks, Bismarck, Minot, sometimes Williston and Dickinson, depending on the program, but it's because this is the small organized schools, I don't think any of you are going to have an issue being eligible based on your population. I'm going to advance to the next slide. I want to give you a picture of what rural development has done just in the course of 1 fiscal year of investments into the state of North Dakota, into our smallest towns and tribal communities. Last fiscal year, we had a pretty historic year, $531 million obligated. And a vast majority of that last year happened to be done into rural hospitals. So if any of you are from, the Rugby area, Cooperstown, Candu, Northwood, those are all projects that we are assisting in the financing of those projects with. You can see kind of categorically where our programs lie. We have housing programs, we have water and environmental programs, community facility program, business and cooperative programs, electric programs, and telecommunications programs. Those last 2 programs on that list are actually not administered through our state agency. We have partnerships, and some of these are structured regionally. None of you would know that. It doesn't really matter. But those 2 programs at the bottom of that list have gotten significant funding increases through the passage of the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the IIJA, and the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act. So those programs will be, will have more money to push out the door. And those funds typically go to, since you're all familiar with our rural electric cooperatives and our rural broadband cooperatives, or what some of us still call telephone companies, that we finance almost all of the projects that build out the infrastructure to deliver high-speed internet and affordable electricity. You want to go to that next slide? If you're ever looking for some historical information on the investments that have been made through rural development into North Dakota or anywhere else across the country, we recently launched a publicly accessible tool so that you can see what some of those investments are into states over the course of more than a decade of data. So now I'm going to jump into some programs we felt might be of interest to you all as leaders in your school districts and also leaders in your community. We know that rural schools are often one of the biggest employers, one of the biggest hubs of a community. And we know that with that, you all have a lot of influence and you all wear a lot of different hats in addition to your role as school leaders. So we want you to be aware of these and to share these with your community. If you see opportunities for rural development to be a partner with the things your community is trying to accomplish. The first one, if you want to go to the next slide, is our community facilities program. You can go to the next one. Community facilities program has available loans, grants, and loan guarantees. The applicants for community facility programs are public bodies, nonprofits, and federally recognized tribes. So you all could be, of course, an applicant for community facilities programs. The purpose of this program is to finance the construction, expansion, or otherwise improve essential community facilities for rural communities that primarily serve rural residents. Multiple examples of that, in addition to schools, which you could certainly access, are any type of care facility, hospitals, clinics, long-term care, childcare, educational facilities like schools and libraries, emergency response. We also help communities bring down the costs of things like new fire trucks or ambulances, police vehicles, equipment, community centers, mobile units. So lots of different ways that this program, should it be serving the public of a community, can be accessed. And can be accessed in combination as loans and grants, loans and loan guarantees, as a combination. We can go to that next slide. The terms for repayment are based on the useful life of the project with a maximum of 40 years. Interest rate is based on the median household income of that service area. Currently 3.75%. By the way, I have Mark Wax in here in the room with me. He is our deputy director and has been with rural development for a very long time. He's one of the most knowledgeable of all of the programs we have. So he's my lifeline sitting in the room with me if I have questions. As I mentioned, because I know everybody is always trying to find grant dollars, our grants are very limited. Congress determines how much money we get to hand out in the form of grants. Most of our programs are done in the form of loans or loan guarantees. And so the eligibility for a grant is based on a sliding scale, anywhere from 15% to 75% of the project cost, depending on, again, the MHI in your service area, population and need. And our state, because of those limited grant dollars, tend to cap any grant that we provide at $50,000, depending on how many applications we have and how much funding remains. We have no maximum, essentially, on the amount of loan we can provide, as long as you have the ability to repay it. And we often partner with a private lender, a lead lender, for a loan guarantee. So as I mentioned, a number of projects across the state that we've helped with include lots of healthcare facilities. So hospitals in Jamestown, Grafton, I mentioned Rugby, Candu, Northwood already. Past ones include Hazen, Watford City, Killdeer, have all been financed through rural development. The Williston Airport for those of you who might be from that northwest corner, I believe that is the largest project rural development has financed in North Dakota. I want to give you a little sample of what some of the ways that community facilities have been used by North Dakota K through 12 schools. So you can see all those examples of very specific uses where they came to rural development as an applicant to receive, in this case, a number of different grants to support larger projects. So you can see that total project cost. You can see the amount that we provided as grant funds and what those purposes were. If you want a little bit of an understanding, so let's just look at that Oberon example. The median household income of Oberon at the time of their application was $38,000, little over $38,000, which is 76.2% of the state non-metro. So excluding those big communities in our state, median household income, which made them eligible for a 35% grant. Versus Dakota Prairie, because of their median household income, was eligible for a 15% grant. So that sliding scale certainly influences that eligibility and then the availability of grant funds to be able to support those projects. Now, of course, in the next slide, I just wanted to share what you all are going to be very familiar with, and that's the School Construction Assistance Revolving Loan Fund provided by the state of North Dakota. The reason that our CF program does not get utilized a lot in North Dakota is because we're competing with an interest rate of 2% that the state provides. However, please know that we are always happy to combine with any of those with this program or any other to complete a project if there is an additional partner that you need in that effort. Do you want me to pause and take any questions on community facility, or do you want to wait until we get to the conclusion of a few more programs?
Yeah, Erin, it might be a good time to pause since that's probably one of the key partnerships in case there's a few questions here. Go ahead if you have questions, folks. Make sure you unmute.
My question would be do you have any examples right now of somebody that's used multiple sources? I have never, I've used the school construction, but back in the day, I really didn't see a lot of, because there used to be zone. There used to be what they called the zone group, and we didn't meet those kind of qualifications. On top of that, a lot of the bigger projects across the state get funded long before you would in a smaller district. So they were difficult.
Well, Steve, I think if you back up to that previous slide where you saw those schools and the things they did, my guess is they had multiple sources of funding for those. Would that be right, Erin? I mean, if you just look at the dollars right there, you know, look at the New Salem project was a $516,000 project. Brian's actually online. I don't know if he knows, he's familiar with that, but the 77.
Yeah, the New Salem project, for example, so only 77.5 was a grant from rural development of a total of a total project cost of 500 and almost 17,000. And our summary of that project shows that the school district itself paid 241,000, and then they fundraised within the community for almost another 200,000. Yep. So that would be that one.
I saw Russ was on board too from Elgin New Leipzig, where I mean there was pretty significant amount there that was put into that project, and I'm guessing the rest came from other sources.
That was actually something Daniel started
prior
with the rural development.
That's right.
So I think that was part of the ESSER funding. So we did the rural development to help purchase the 17 ventilators, and then we used ESSER fundings for the remainder.
Yep, there were CARES Act dollars in there, and the school district pitched in just a couple hundred, it looks like, on one of these. There were two different applications from Elgin, New Leipzig to complete that project. Yep, ESSER and a state education grant, looks like, in addition. So those would be a couple projects that
regarding the
included more than
application.
Say
Can
that
this be
again?
used in conjunction, or can this be used in conjunction with other current projects we have going on right now?
as a reimbursement, no.
Okay, so for example, like we're working on some facility improvement projects through Core Facility Solutions. And we've entered into the agreement. So once we started with that agreement, this is just for anything quote new then, correct?
Well, I think as long as the work hasn't been started, I'm looking for confirmation, of
Yes,
course, from
yes.
Mark, but yeah, I'm learning still. So that would be, if a project has been started and you're looking for reimbursement, no.
Okay, thank you.
So if I've got a project that's in the works, working with somebody like Core Facilities, and we are in the planning stages and I know it's going to cost this amount, I could submit then for a USDA Rural Development Grant.
Absolutely, yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, let me touch on a few other programs that might be of interest for at least you to have an awareness of. In no way do I anticipate anybody's going to become an expert in any of this. And nor am I, frankly. I get the good fortune of being able to pitch it to one of our team members when those really specific questions come up. But I also know that many of you have struggled with recruiting new teachers and having available housing. So I want to share with you some of the ways in which we can help with rural housing. We'll go to the first one, is a loan guarantee. So this would be in partnership with a private lender. When an individual is applying for a home loan, we, Rural Development, can guarantee that loan to make it a bit more affordable for that applicant. Now, that isn't, lenders know about us, lenders should know about us. We do lots of lender presentations. So this loan guarantee program specifically helps to benefit low and moderate income borrowers, which frankly is going to be a lot of the people who work for you. Household income not exceeding 115%. They of course still have to meet credit qualifications. They can't just, we can't still just loan to anybody, but that's a way of trying to assist borrowers in getting a home loan. You can see on the next slide what that income level looks like. So we just included a couple examples. The lowest county in lowest income county in North Dakota happens to be Richland. Highest is Williams County. And so that little circled area, the low and moderate income earners, those are the folks that could access a loan guarantee when they are applying for a home loan through a private lender. For individuals who are applying for us directly, the next program is a single family housing direct loan. So that is where we, again, operate very similarly to a bank, targeting a low and very low income population of individuals or families to purchase, build, improve, repair, rehabilitate a permanent residence in a rural community. The benefits of this is that we don't require a down payment. Interest rates as of this last week were at about 4%. Closing costs and repairs can be included. There's no prepayment penalties, and depending on their income, they may even be eligible for payment assistance on the loan. So wanted to share that with you. You can see on the next slide then, that is the target population of very low and low income, what those earners would make in order to be eligible for a rural development direct loan for a home. The next program is our single family home repair loan and grant program, targeting, again, the very low income population. So for those folks who already own a home, we can provide a 1% loan, 1% interest loan for up to 20 years, up to $40,000 to repair the home that they have. Of note that this is not like superficial improvements. This is heating, insulation, windows, doors, things that can help either become more energy efficient or be safer in the home that they're in. And for those individuals who happen to be 62 years or older, they can also qualify for a grant of up to $10,000. So that would not be need to be repaid to repair their home. So to qualify for that grant at age 62, that would be your income, and that very low income population is who we can serve with this program. Not nearly as well utilized our housing programs as we would like them to be. So the more we can just create some awareness of us as a partner in home ownership, the better. And last would be a housing preservation grant that's available for those of you who are familiar with planning councils. There are some planning councils who apply for these funds. In the last fiscal year, we provided $150,000 in grants to 3 different nonprofit entities or planning councils, where they use those funds to rehab and repair single-family housing in rural communities. Okay, and then the last one I want to share is, just kidding, it's not the last one. I added some more, is our Distance Learning and Telemedicine Grant Program. If you want to go to the next slide, you all would be eligible as applicants for that, but I also know that many of you are already pretty advanced in obtaining the equipment, audio, video, ITV that you need. We work with broadband facilities, computer hardware, but the one thing I would note is that sometimes instructional programming can be included as a cost in this grant. So there will be some limitations on that, but we have had folks apply for purposes of the cost of instructional programming, but it has to be with a live instructor. So there has to be a live instructor on one end to users on the other end. Those awards you can see range from $50,000 to $1 million with a 15% match. As I mentioned, Watford City recently submitted an application during that last application window, which closed January 31st. And if you look at the next slide, I just want to show you a map that's available online so you can see what some of those past award recipients have used those funds for. Some past awards have been, while not specific to K through 12, UND has used it. North Central School District in 1997, all the way back then. Langdon School District Foundation in 2001. Stanley School District in 2000, the North Dakota EduTech Council, University System, Bismarck State College has used it, and partners with rural hospitals to train nurses so that those folks don't have to leave their communities. Southeast Region Career and Tech Center used it for $390,000 with end users down in that southeast corner of the state in Windmere, Lidgerwood, Fairmont, Wahpeton, Richland, and Hankinson. And the Maddox School District used it with an end user in Leeds. And the Great Northwest Education Co-op have also utilized that grant, have been awarded those grants. So if you were to use that link to access that map, you can hover over those communities and see what those uses were if you're interested in looking a little bit deeper. So the last thing I want to mention, the last programs I want to highlight are our business and cooperative programs. Now, none of you would be eligible applicants directly for these programs, but I want you to have an awareness of them because they're opportunities to partner with somebody in your community who could help you access money. So for example, the Rural Business Development Grant, I just wanted to highlight the language in here because I've had recently an educator in North Dakota reach out and ask if they would be eligible. This one can support rural distance learning programs that provide educational or job training services, but it is specific to adult students. So there are some limitations there, and just wanted to make sure that that was clarified if any of you happen to catch that language as a use in that. But ultimately that is used to help small and emerging businesses to grow or expand. They're often used in rural communities to do feasibility studies for example, vacated buildings. Animos used this grant program to rehab an old bank into a cafe. So lots of different uses for it, but some limitations on how a K through 12 school could use it. The next one is what we call Red Leg program. So Rural Economic Development Loan and Grant. Now the eligible applicants for this program, either these loans or grants, have to be your rural electric cooperative or your rural telephone company or broadband cooperative. Ultimately, the purpose of these funds is that co-op would apply for funding either on behalf of a specified project, or the utility uses rural development funds to establish a revolving loan fund so that they can support community projects themselves. You'll see in the uses that there are a couple different ways I think that you all could certainly benefit from this. Community development assistance to nonprofits, and facilities and equipment to educate and train rural residents. There are a number of co-ops who utilize these funds to help their service providers to purchase things like fire trucks, ambulances, to support public services. So that's certainly one way you could partner with a rural electric cooperative or broadband cooperative to finance projects in your school district. I want to show you the way they work just very briefly. So the next slide shows that on the left, what would happen is that rural utility would borrow money from rural development. This is a pass-through loan, okay? So they would borrow money from us on behalf of you, for example, at 0% interest. This could be used for a community facility type project for up to $2 million. The next one will show how the grant is used. So in this case, the rural utility down in the bottom left corner applies for funds from rural development with matching funds of 20%. So they could get a maximum of $360,000 to create a revolving loan fund. That revolving loan fund is then administered by that rural utility cooperative to support projects in their community. There are plenty, if you look at the next slide, of our rural electric cooperatives or broadband cooperatives who have created revolving loan funds started through rural development to support their communities. So if you're in one of those service areas, you could certainly reach out to those cooperatives if there is a need and see if it's a way that you could partner with them. When they set up their revolving loan funds, they get to negotiate the terms with those local partners. The goal is always to keep those low interest and low barrier. So applying through your co-op is likely going to be a little bit easier than applying for a federal program directly. But wanted to highlight a way that you all could build on partnerships within your community, especially if those funds already exist. So I will wrap up here. If you use that QR code, or if you just type into Google USDA Rural Development Summary of Programs, you can read more about the up to 70 programs that we administer. I know I didn't touch on all of them, but again, I know that you are all bombarded with information and wanted to make sure that whatever I was sharing was most relevant, I thought, to knowing rural school districts as relatively well as I do. So.
So Erin, a question that I would have in terms of partnering with community for facility usage. If a school district partnered to put together a lab so that training could be done for any number of things, maybe it's rural ambulance training, maybe it's chemical application, farm chemical application, could be bus driver training that's all done virtually through a network. Would a lab that's being established for that kind of purpose within a school maybe qualify for funding?
I think that sounds like we would certainly be able to find something that could support it. Yep.
Okay. And then one other thing, and that maybe this prompts some questions too. I know we have some small school districts who are, right at that point where they're considering maybe it's time for us to merge with our neighboring district, and we've got a facility here that's still usable, and we're considering converting it to a community center of some type. Are there dollars that would be available to help those school districts maybe
Yes.
convert their facilities?
Yep, to do a feasibility study or some sort of planning of what potentially that facility could be used for. Yes. Mhm.
So we'd open it to other questions. If people have questions for Erin about the topic today and might be useful to you, please unmute and ask the questions.
Well, Erin, I see Tyler Hansen sitting there, and he and I have had this discussion a lot because career academies seem to be huge across the state of North Dakota with a lot of funding going to the
Yep.
8 big cities. But when you're trying to put together a career academy in Edgeley, North Dakota, that's not always the easiest because we're one of the last places to get some of that money from the state. So is there programs that we can help? We're all into that choice ready. Is there programs that we can help get kids to that point where they're offered the same opportunities as they may have in a Fargo, West Fargo, or a Bismarck with a career and technical education?
Based on that really broad question, I would say yes. There are going to be ways where we could even combine maybe a couple of different programs that could support. If it's facility needs, if it's equipment, if it's potentially even supporting the cost of training, of providing the training, of the technology. There should be a variety of ways. Now, those grant dollars are likely going to be limited. And I know that that's always the challenge, is that we have unlimited access to loan dollars, but our grant ones are limited. But there's no reason why we couldn't have a conversation. And once that discussion happens locally, where you at least have an idea of the kinds of things you would be needing, if it's a building, if it's equipment, come to us and have a conversation. I mean, our folks can figure out lots of ways where, if it's not one program, it could be another. Mixed use buildings are a little bit different. If there's housing involved with another use, that gets difficult for us. I would suggest that rural development has not necessarily caught up with the trend that's moving in that direction, even into a number of our rural communities. So there are some limitations there, but there are rural school districts who are looking at ways of opening up access to their kitchen for the community to use, like different ways where you can start having more interaction with the community. The New Salem project, I believe they even opened that up to the public and included a user fee. It can't be a membership, because then it's an exclusive club. But for purposes of community use, you can attach a user fee.
Thank you, Steve, for the shout out. I would also just add to that, Erin, as a former Job Development Authority president here in Edgeley, we're pretty proud of the Butcher's Edge, which we also worked hand in hand with. But what I would highly recommend any superintendent on here is find your local electric company. We've got Dakota Valley in my backyard along with DRN, Dickey Rural Networks. And just go out there and talk to some people out there, and they will be able to guide you in relationship to funding mechanisms. They have individuals that are working full-time in those capacities, where all of us on this call, we're wearing multiple hats and trying to figure out how we're going to fund things. So to add a caveat to Dr. Johnson's message in relationship to a career academy, I'm working hand in hand with both Dakota Valley and Dickey Rural to make this a reality.
Awesome.
Obviously, we're waiting on a few funding pieces from the legislature, which is going to be a little bit short funding wise, but I think we've got some mechanisms in place to hopefully make this a reality so we can develop that pipeline. Our next employee at Butcher's Edge is in our hallways. Our next lineman at Dakota Valley is in our hallways. And we're developing those relationships to ensure that we provide a cooperative work experience for these individuals on top of hopefully about a $2 million 0% loan that we're hopefully going to be able to utilize. And it'll just be a great segue into building these opportunities for students. So that's what I would recommend anybody here to continue to explore. Call me, email me. It was good. If you could be on your local job development authority, I would highly recommend doing it. It's not the most enjoyable conversation, but I learned a ton about opportunities that school districts can tap into that sometimes we forget about in rural North Dakota. So thank you, Butcher's Edge. And if you're ever in town, Erin, stop in, as we also have a direct pipeline to our school nutrition program here at school, and it's fresh. Right from the Butcher's Edge.
I already went down and visited it, Tyler.
Oh,
Yeah, it was great. And Dakota Valley is actually like one of the best users of all of the co-ops of that Red Leg program. I will say, and I think many of you can appreciate this, if you didn't see your local co-op on that list, those decisions are made by local boards. Some local boards are willing to take a little bit of risk to support their communities, and some of them are not. So if they're not on the list, that's another conversation worth having. When those opportunities are happening, and they're happening really successfully in other areas of the state, you would hope they would want to learn from some of their own colleagues who are in similar positions to be able to access those opportunities.
Any other questions or comments for Erin? Well, Erin, we certainly appreciate you coming on board with us today and sharing that information. And again, she'll provide some links to Steve and I, and we will send some of those links out to everybody so that you can access any information. And certainly there's a phone number will be in that link too, I'm sure, if you want to reach out to Erin or email her and ask other information from the presentation. We really appreciate it, Erin. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And I should have noted, like, the teacher in me hates that I had so many words on those slides, but I also wanted you to be able to have the slides at the end and be able to remember what each of those were capable of doing. So we'll make sure that either Mike or Steve give out my contact information here. I can connect you with our specialists at any time, and that you have access to the PDF file of those slides I shared. Thank you all again. Wishing you a great last couple months of the school year.
Thanks, Erin. You're welcome to stay on board. We just usually do a quick Q&A at the end here. So if there's anything else that people would